there's been a lot of smoke recently around Will Levis and the Indianapolis Colts. So is Levis the Colts quarterback one heading into the NFL draft? Well, let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle podcast presented by Fan Nation on SI.com. My name is Andrew Moore, and I'm joined here by my fellow writer and co-host here at Horseshoe Huddle, Drake Wally. Drake, 2 weeks from tonight, we will know who the next quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts is. 14 more days. We can see the light. The light at the end of the tunnel is there. We're almost to the finish line, brother.
Man, it's this is the first time I've been this deep into like especially obviously Colts quarterbacks, but I didn't realize how stressful it is, waiting for the next franchise quarterback. And I'm kind of starting to understand what a lot of those other AFC South teams have been trying to do for year after year. So yes, very ready for this whole thing to be over.
Right. And that's why, we've been talking about it for months. This is the most important offseason for the Colts in the last 25 years, because we're not at the top of the draft. We don't have an Andrew Luck there that we know the Colts are going to take and just hit the ground running with. So it's been an interesting offseason so far. 2 more weeks, and then we will finally have our answer. I know everybody is excited for that. We're going to kick off the show with a super chat from Wyatt Law. Thanks for letting me settle my bet this way, enjoying the Indy draft guide. For those that don't know, Wyatt Law, him and I had a bet going about the Colts and Hendon Hooker a couple months ago. Colts possibly taking Hendon Hooker. Now, while it is still possible, and Wyatt Law, I promise, if the Colts do take Hendon Hooker by the slim chance, I will send you your money back and then some. But we settled up on that bet today. So if you haven't done so, please go follow Wyatt Law. Great guy. Loyal listener, hell of a Colts fan. We really do appreciate you, Wyatt, from all the way back from a Colts podcast days. We got Saul is in the building here. Stormy is here as well. Great to see you again. DSG Goodbar as always. Gary Stidham. We got Logan Schmidt. We got the whole crew besides Stats Matt, but I think he'll be on here in a bit. But hey, as Wyatt Law said, he's enjoying the Indy draft guide. So I think you guys all should do so as well. The Indy draft guide is out. It is live. If you click the link in our description below, you can go and order your copy of the Indy draft guide to get read up on all of these quarterbacks and over 225 different prospects ahead of the NFL draft, with their specific fits to the Indianapolis Colts. So go check it out. A lot of hard work done on that. And we're pretty proud of it. So definitely go check that out. And of course, if you haven't done so already, go ahead and look at that ticker. Follow Horseshoe Huddle on Twitter at ColtsOnFN. Go ahead and like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook and subscribe to that YouTube channel. Hit that bell so you know whenever we're going live like tonight to talk about Will Levis. So you know whenever Destin and Shot are going live with the Saddle Up podcast. Because, guys, the shows are just going to continue to get better from here. And a lot of it is because of you guys. Stats Matt joining us here saying Wyatt Law figured out how to do the super chat. Yes, he did. So Drake, without further ado, as we have Rich Wheeler also in here, it's hard. You guys see, this is what happens. The chat is so good. We have so many good supporters of this show. It's hard to shout out everybody here. But if you want to ensure your shout out, go ahead and do what Wyatt Law did. Give us a super chat tonight. We always do appreciate that from the bottom of our hearts. But Drake, I've been talking enough. Let's dive in here. Will Levis, the quarterback out of Kentucky, probably the most polarizing quarterback prospect that has the potential to come to the Indianapolis Colts at the top of the draft. A guy that it seems like people either love him or you hate him. There really isn't no in between. We're going to try to bring some sense into that and try to give a unbiased perspective of our opinion of Will Levis. But here's some facts about Will Levis. big dude, 6'3", 232 pounds, out of the University of Kentucky. He was a three-star prospect coming out of high school and actually began his career at Penn State. Wasn't used very often at Penn State, was more of a wildcat quarterback, but he transferred to Kentucky before the 2021 season after graduating from Penn State, became a 2-year starter for the Kentucky Wildcats. And last year, while it was kind of a down year for Will Levis, playing through some injuries, still had some decent stats: 65% completion percentage, 2,406 yards, 19 touchdowns to go along with 10 interceptions. He was voted a 2-time team captain there at Kentucky and won the College Sports Communicators Academic All-American team for Division I football. So Will Levis, smart kid, tough kid, and a guy that really over the last couple seasons has come on and proven to be someone that could be a top NFL talent.
Yeah, and a lot of people have said, well, he's a year, he's kind of a year removed from the real prospecting that was done, which is again why the Colts did so much on Richardson and not as much on Levis, is because they've already done a lot of research on Will Levis, and they did in 21 when he was really tearing things apart there in Kentucky, and of course a rough last season, but not really his fault. There was a lot of changes happening in coaching. There was a lot of offensive line problems where people were running through like open floodgates and just nailing the guy constantly. And he's still stuck in there and made a lot of great plays. And he's a big play waiting to happen type guy, physical, like you said, not easy to deter from taking shots. I mean, he is the true definition of a gunslinger.
Yeah, I mean, that's the perfect word for Will Levis, an absolute gunslinger, tough as nails. One of the pros we'll get into is his leadership, how hard he works. He does have some flaws, but every single one of these quarterbacks has some flaws. But Will Levis, I mean, it's hard to find anything wrong with Will Levis, the person. He is just the ultimate competitor. Before we dive into the pros, Joe's got a question for you, Drake. What beer you drinking tonight, man? You normally don't drink beer. So what's in that glass?
Oh, it's not beer. It's actually a nice light Moscow Mule with a little bit of little mintiness going on.
Oh, we love that. We love Moscow mules around these parts. Absolutely. So, Drake, let's dive into the pros of Will Levis. I know I've been kicking these off the past couple weeks. It's your turn to kick it off. What is your biggest pro of Will Levis? What do you think is his best trait?
Oh man. First off, there's many fantastic traits about the guy. A lot of pros, in my opinion, more than cons. And the biggest one for me is just the toughness and willingness to succeed. I mean, he had the willingness to have a 4.0 GPA. He had the willingness to take any shot that you can possibly imagine from literally every single team, every single game, the biggest of guys. He also has leadership ability to still lead his team to a winning record, still put up pretty decent numbers. And we cannot emphasize enough, this team was not equipped to have him. They really weren't. Like he was kind of on an island alone and had to play a lot of that thing we say called Superman ball, where a lot of times you're not going to win, even in college. So for me, number one is his absolute toughness, willingness to succeed, and every single coach has to at least be, intrigued by especially his progression after injury.
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at Will Levis, I know a lot of people like to dwell strictly on what he did in 2022, but those injuries that he played through really hurt his game. I mean, he had a shoulder injury. He was playing through a lower body injury. I think it might have been a foot injury. As Sarah Small comes in with another super chat. Sarah, we love you, appreciate you. If you guys haven't done so already, Sarah's an absolute sweetheart. Go give her a follow on Twitter. She's pumped for the draft. We're all pumped for the draft as well, as that's all we've pretty much been talking about for the past month. Ever since Shane Steichen was hired, it's been straight on to the quarterback talk, and that's what we're talking about here. So good to see you, Sarah. Thanks a lot as always for your support. Stats Matt said the best trait is between toughness and his release and his arm. But yeah, I mean, talking about the toughness, I mean, when you're playing through all of that, you're playing on a team in Kentucky that was not very good in 2022. A lot of that had to be put on the back of Will Levis for that offense to succeed. And not once did he complain. Not once did he put his teammates down. It was all about what he could do to get better, what he could do to lift that team up. And you have to respect that. He came in, he did everything right. He worked his butt off every single day to try to get better and try to lift that team. And that means a lot. It means a lot to the people in the locker room, means a lot to the coaches, and that's just going to help you at the next level. And then obviously, the other huge thing that really sticks out about Will Levis is that rocket ship connected to his right shoulder. He's got an absolute howitzer for an arm. I don't think it's at the level of Anthony Richardson, but it's right there. I think Anthony Richardson just edges him out in arm strength, but that's saying something because Anthony Richardson, when he comes into the league, is going to have one of the strongest arms in the NFL, and I fully expect Will Levis to be up there in that regard as well.
Another pro, and I love that Stats Matt brought this up because I noticed this at the combine, and this legitimately, I told you, I said this actually gets me kind of excited about Will Levis a little bit, is how quick that ball gets out of that pocket and how fast it is and how strong that release is. Now, could he run into maybe peppering his receivers a little too hard in the hands? Probably. In fact, it's almost guaranteed to happen at least a few times. But man, the guy has a very quick release, and he's got it close to his chest. He's got it right here, and it's like a fireball. And so you won't have to worry about quick releases not happening. You won't have to worry about him getting that ball the hell out of the pocket when pressure's coming. You also won't have to worry about him, not being willing to take contact, because trust me, he will be 100% willing to take the contact. So I absolutely love that StatsMat brought that up, because something that is not talked about enough outside of his deep ball is just how fast that release is and how strong it is too.
He does have a very quick release, and I should have looked this up when I was writing my piece, kind of comparing Anthony Richardson and Will Levis earlier this week. I should have looked up how many passes that Will Levis has had batted down, because with that quick release, it's really I mean, it's hard for defensive linemen to get their arms up and their hands up there to bat those passes down. Stats, Matt, if you want to look that up, or anyone else can get to Pro Football Focus real quick to see how many passes Will Levis had batted down last year. That'd be greatly appreciated. But when you talk about that quick release, it's very compact. There's no wasted motion with it. That's always something that as coaches in the NFL are trying to do. As a Jackal says, 2 batted passes. That's pretty incredible. Pretty
That is
incredible. That
very good.
only 2 passes were batted down from Will Levis last year. So yeah, I mean, you want that quick release. You want to be able to get the ball out to those receivers and let them go to work. So that's definitely a plus. And then I think another thing that stood out is he's not a statue in the pocket either. Very very mobile quarterback, especially when he's healthy. I mean, you didn't really see it too much last year because he was battling that turf toe. But a fully healthy Will Levis has a very punishing running style. Not afraid to take on a defender one-on-one. Of course, when you're in the NFL, you might not necessarily want to do that. You want to try to protect yourself. We all know how that can go, Mr. Andrew Luck. But he's a very, like I said, tough guy, powerful running style, and someone that can get you plenty of yards on the ground, whether on a design quarterback run or if the play breaks down, try to get going that way. As we've got another super chat here from Nathan. Nathan, thank you so much for the
Hey,
super chat, man. Another loyal listener.
love the picture too. Let's go.
Before we kind of keep talking about Levis's running style, Nathan asks, is it true Indy's ready to move up from 4 to 2? Any truth in that? From my standpoint, there is not any truth from 4 to 2, because the Houston Texans have that number 2 pick. The Colts aren't going to be trading with a division foe, and the Texans don't want to trade with a division foe to allow them to go up and get the quarterback of their choosing. If a trade up for the Colts does happen, it would be from 4 to 3 with the Arizona Cardinals. Drake, what do you say?
Absolutely. The Texans aren't going to be like, hey, you know what? You want to better your team, and we play you twice a year. Great. Go for it. They're not going to do that. And plus, the Colts probably wouldn't be like, they'd probably be like, well, we're not going to give you these players because you're the Texans. It would be a stalemate. They'd get nowhere. So they're pretty much just like, no, we're not even going to dip into those waters. It is interesting, though, because I've been thinking more and more about it that they might be trading up to number 3, but number 2, no, just because it's a divisional foe. If it wasn't, absolutely, that would be in play.
I know the Colts and the Cardinals have discussed trading up to the number 3 spot. The Colts have been interested. That right now, obviously, they haven't come to an agreement on compensation, but the Colts have been in contact with the Arizona Cardinals about jumping up to number 3. That is a fact. So, Nathan, once again, we really appreciate the super chat, man.
Yeah.
You're awesome. You're in the show all the time. So once again, appreciate your support. We've got another one from Spooks Hill Joe. Appreciate the super chat, man. You guys are just coming with all the love tonight, Joe. Joe, hey, Joe, maybe Drake is going to have to drink a beer for you, or next time Drake will have to drink your drink of choice.
Yeah, you might have to throw a beer down in the chat, and I might have to sport that in the next episode.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Joe. Oh my goodness, you guys are just unbelievable. Logan Schmidt, another super chat. Nothing to say, just hey guys, Logan Schmidt. A guy that we absolutely love to interact with on Twitter. Hilarious dude.
A lot of respect.
Great fan of the Colts. Logan and Drake actually do a Twitter Spaces every Friday night, so you guys should check that out as well. Great Colts content. So Logan, we appreciate you, buddy. But Drake, getting back on track here, Will Levis and his running style. What do you think about it? And do you think it's something that he's going to be able to use as effectively at the NFL level?
Well, real quick, I want to reference something that you said for Andrew said, Mr. Andrew Luck, it might not work in the NFL like it did in college, Mr. Andrew Luck. To anybody that doesn't know why he's saying that, I believe I understand what he's saying. He tried that against a smaller safety in Mr. Eric Berry from the Kansas City Chiefs, and he literally suplexed Andrew Luck. So these are not college players that he's trying to run over.
I was more saying just kind of protect yourself from injury, because we all know Andrew Luck had no regard for his body, put his body on the line, and over time, when you play that way in the NFL, your body's not going to be able to hold up to the constant hits that old Mr. 12 took.
Very true. One of the things I was going to say, though, is I think that he might actually be quicker than we think. I think he may be getting underrated for how mobile he can be. I also think that when you talk about Shane Steichen and he talks about vertical – oh, gosh, we already answered that one. But Shane Steichen's talking about that vertical explosive passing game. Man, Will Levis – is a perfect fit for that. And also I wrote a piece where I had each one of these 4 quarterbacks, who would be the best fit for them and like who would have the biggest, year with each respective pick. For me, it was Alec Pierce with Will Levis, because there'd be no shortage of deep shots. There'd be no shortage of 50-50 and high balls and red zone targets. I'm telling you, Shane Steichen could make it work likely with Will Levis, that vertical passing game he wants to implement.
Happy birthday, Joe. Hey, if you're drinking beer, that's all that matters. Keystone Light will get the job done. We appreciate you joining us on your birthday. And Saul's got a question for you here, Drake. Which quarterback do you like more, Anthony Richardson or Will Levis? I know the answer to this, but go ahead and explain.
Very brief. I personally prefer Anthony Richardson, but I need to say why just by talking about Will Levis. He's not far off from me personally. I love his athleticism. I love his arm. I love how quick he gets that ball out. I love he was in a pro style offense, maybe more than anything. I also love his tenacity. It's just those traits. It's just that if Richardson's not in this draft, there's no question that Will Levis is the most athletic quarterback prospect, more than likely. So you're talking about a freak athlete who is the highest graded ever at the NFL Combine. Okay, so the most athletic ever. So that's who Will Levis's competition is. I just personally prefer Richardson, but if he was to get picked first and Levis goes to the Colts, I really think that still would be a pretty good fit.
Right. Stats Matt says, I like Levis. He's a very physical runner, but he needs to back off just a tad. I think has a Josh Allen style runner, but maybe even more physical. We say that Josh needs to chill. And that's true. That's something that Will Levis is going to have to really be careful of in the NFL. He's going to have to make sure he takes care of his body, doesn't take those unnecessary hits. And that's something that he's really going to have to learn. And I think he will over time. But I think it's going to be it's going to be huge to see what situation Will Levis goes to in the NFL, because all the physical traits are there for Will Levis to be a very very high level franchise quarterback. It's just about putting those all together, and that's kind of where we get into some of the cons of Will Levis. I think the con that I want to start out with the most, and I think this is something that in order to be a successful quarterback, he's really going to need to develop. And it's not the accuracy. We'll kind of get to that, but I think it's a progression. So when I watch the film, Will Levis, he has been able to go through multiple progressions. But a lot of times you see Will Levis just lock onto that one guy and throw the football, whether it's there or not. Exactly, has that tunnel vision. That's something that he's gonna need to be able to do. Really work on processing, going from read to read, reading the entire field rather than just one side, or going one read and then trying to take off and run. I think that's probably one of the biggest things Will Levis is going to need to work at to be really successful at the next level.
Well, and that kind of goes to the other point is sometimes he isn't shifting defenders with his eyes. A lot of times, I mean, there's a reason that you can't wear smoked visors as a quarterback. Defense
Mhm.
needs to be able to see your eyes to make it fair. So if a lot of times if you're just watching one guy go down the field, that defense is going to understand that you're probably going to pepper that target right there on with a forced throw, and they'll read your eyes and they'll pick off passes like that. So that is one thing also that's a concern for me. I do think that he could have this easily polished up with Shane Steichen, but his footwork is a little bit out of control, mostly to the left side because he closes off that left part of his body. On the right
Mhm.
side, he's far more accurate than he is on the left side. A lot of those throws, some of those throws sail, and they're pretty open. I mean, we actually saw it at the combine where, the underwear Olympics, open air, he missed a throw or two that were simple out routes to the left because he locks that leg and doesn't open up his stance. So I do think that those are things, though, again, that a guru who's worked with multiple quarterbacks and a good staff could probably shore up.
I was just going to bring that up. How when we were watching him there in person at the NFL Combine, that's what I was watching. I was watching more of his footwork. Yes, I mean you really don't pay attention to how many passes they complete. You want to really look at the mechanics there, and a lot of his upper body is very good mechanic wise. I mean, we talked about it, that compact release,
Oh, yeah.
keeping his shoulders level, but a lot of it is just his footwork, and especially like you said, throwing to the left side. Now, watching the film at his pro day, I liked how the footwork looked, and that's something that I think is key about Will Levis. I think he knows what his shortcomings are, and he's working to improve that. He's very very honest with himself about where he does need to improve. And you saw more consistent footwork at his pro day. Now, when there's a live ball and he's got 300-pound defensive linemen bursting off the line of scrimmage trying to rip him down, is it going to be able to? Is his mechanics going to be able to stay? That's something we're not going to be able to see until live game action. But it is encouraging to see Will Levis knows where his shortcomings are and he is actively working on it. And we're already starting to see improvements in the minuscule, the little bits and pieces that we're privy to see, such as the NFL Combine, his pro day. You're starting to see better sequencing and better footwork moving together with his upper body. So that's it's encouraging. We'll have to see if it does continue. Stats Matt says, to me, his biggest con is panicking and his progressions. Add in his tightness and his mechanics, that doesn't seem natural. And that's kind of the other thing that I was going to get to, is Will Levis, as far as him holding the ball too long or taking a lot of sacks, that is a problem. When you look at Pro Football Focus does a really good job and has really good metrics on this. When you're looking at the pressure to sack percentage or pressure to sack rate, it calculates how many times when a quarterback is pressured, how many times does it end up in a sack. Last year, when he was injured, Will Levis basically was sacked a fourth of the time that he was pressured, it ended in a sack. In 2021, when he was healthy, it was a fifth of the time. So it was about 20% of the time that Will Levis was pressured, he was sacked. Now, comparing that to Anthony Richardson was only sacked on 9% of the times that he was pressured. That might not seem like a huge discrepancy, only 10 to 15, 16%. In the NFL, that is a huge discrepancy. So when Will Levis is under pressure, it doesn't seem like a lot of times he can get out of it. A lot of times he more holds on to the ball, and that's going to end up in sacks.
Yeah, and real quick, just to highlight that. Now, this is also kind of giving him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt because of that injury. Okay, so here's his rushing statistics year by year. 2019 with Penn State, 213 rushing yards. 2020 as a sophomore at Penn State, 260 rushing yards. 2021 with Kentucky, 376 rushing yards and 9 touchdowns. 2021, negative 107 rushing yards. Okay. Dude took too many sacks. Dude took far too many sacks. Even with the most brutally terrible offensive line, you should not have negative rushing yards when you are that athletic.
Right.
And he's hurt, but got to let go of the ball.
And in college, whenever you're sacked, it's different from the NFL. In the NFL, it doesn't count against your rushing total as a quarterback. In college, it does. Whenever you're sacked, it counts against your rushing yardage. And as it was already stated in the chat, thanks to Stats Matt for answering DSG Goodbar's question. Will Levis is working with Jordan Palmer as his private quarterback coach. Jordan Palmer is one of the better private quarterback coaches in the entire country. Works with many guys that are preparing for the draft and many other NFL quarterbacks in the offseason just working on their mechanics. So he's in a good spot. He's with a good coach, someone that is going to drill him very hard and really work on it with him. And now we'll just have to see if he can kind of put it all together. And as CMDSR says, 35, now 44 people watching us live here, it looks like, and only 12 likes. Hey, hit that like button, according to CMDSR. We'd really appreciate that. But Drake, let's kind of answer the question here. We've been talking a lot about Will Levis. There's a lot of smoke. I know Matt Miller of ESPN reported from a source that the Colts have Will Levis ranked higher than Anthony Richardson on their draft board. And I'll kind of get into my opinion of that here as we wrap this up. But Drake, I'm going to ask you, will Will Levis be an Indianapolis Colt?
I think there's an incredibly high chance. I really think that I think he is definitely, there's definitely a very good chance. And I also, as far as if he's available, would they take him? I personally think that they are a little bit higher on Anthony Richardson. That's not biased. That's just personal opinion. That's non-biased opinion. But I do think that if AR goes and they're sitting right there and Will Levis is available, absolutely they're going to take him. And I also think that Steichen could make him very successful if he can hit the ceiling that he's got, because it's still very high.
David, we appreciate the hell out of you, buddy. We love that you're enjoying us too. Yeah, Drake. Here's the thing. In my opinion, I honestly think, like you said, I think with any of these top 4 quarterbacks, whether it's Young, Stroud, Richardson, or Levis, I think when you pair him with a guy like Shane Steichen, who has had success with quarterbacks of all types wherever he has been, I think Shane Steichen and this Colts offensive staff are going to put that quarterback in a position to succeed. Now, not all the offenses are going to look the same, because Steichen has said multiple times since he was hired as the head coach that the offense is going to fit the strengths of the quarterback. So depending on which quarterback the Colts choose, the offense is going to be tailored heavily to what that quarterback does best. Now, I don't, again, I think it was DSG Goodbar. Yep, right here. Smoke screen season. Don't trust your lying eyes and ears. If you think that the Colts are leaking to anybody what they are thinking at the quarterback position, the most important draft pick that they are making in years, literally
Preach.
decades, you're kidding yourself. The Indianapolis Colts under Chris Ballard have been incredibly tight-lipped. So do you think that's all of a sudden going to change now that they're taking a quarterback, the most important position in the entire NFL? Absolutely not. If the Colts wanted that to get out, that's why it's getting out. It's either a smokescreen, number one, or it's Matt Miller or other sources making that up or getting it from secondhand sources that don't actually know what the Colts are going to do. Do the Colts like Will Levis? I have it on good authority that yes, they do like Will Levis, but that doesn't mean he's at the top of their board. Do I think Will Levis is at the top of their board? No. I think Anthony Richardson is ahead of Will Levis at who they would prefer. And I agree with you, Drake, though. It's not by a big margin. I think it's closer than what people think because and obviously that you when you factor in Bryce Young and CJ Stroud into the mix, things get even more complicated there. But when you're talking about Anthony Richardson and Will Levis, both are physical specimens. Both have howitzers for arms. Both need some help with accuracy. So there's a lot of the same things. I'd say Anthony Richardson's a little bit better of an athlete. Will Levis is probably a little bit more accurate at this point than Anthony Richardson. But again, when you have guys that are that close, and I'm saying the Colts probably have these guys very, very close, like neck and neck. You always have to come back to what Ballard has said since 2017, and that's not going to change. Bet on high-end traits. We want to make sure we're betting on those high-end traits. And you can watch multiple episodes of With the Next Pick. That has been said by the man in charge himself. You combine that to the success that Shane Steichen has had with a quarterback that can really exploit running on the ground and the vertical passing game like he did last year with Jalen Hurts. Shane Steichen wants to bring an explosive vertical passing game back to Indianapolis. I think that's why I would lean that the Colts like Anthony Richardson probably a little bit more than they like Will Levis. It might even come down to in these meetings, who has that better obsession with their craft. And I think they are absolutely right there together. Especially when you hear, which I see Stats Matt's super chat talking about the Anthony Richardson letter. We're going to talk about that here next. I would still put it today. If I had to put a percentage on it, I'd say 65% Anthony Richardson is the next quarterback of the Colts. I'd probably go 25% Will Levis. And then I think that gets me to 90%, 5% Stroud, 5% Young, if by a chance they end up falling. But as of right now, I think that he has the second best odds to be the quarterback of the Colts. I know I'm kind of rambling here, but I don't think that he is above what the Colts would view Anthony Richardson and his potential.
Yes, and I'm glad that you mentioned that because you have to be very careful where you absorb the news from because it truly is smokescreen lying BS time, and it's only going to get more, and that smoke is going to get thicker and thicker. So, no, the Colts did not tell Will Levis that they are going to draft him at 4. Okay, they didn't inform his teammates either. They didn't do any of that BS. So, you got to be very careful what you absorb. But I do got to say, I also think that he has very high traits. And again, we're talking about his competition is Anthony Richardson, the most athletic guy ever tested. So you give Levis his credit. He's worked very hard. He's improved. He's battled through injury to get to this point. I think that he has potential and very high potential, especially with a guy like Shane Steichen to succeed.
let's get to some more super chats. We really appreciate you guys have been just dominating the super chats tonight. It really means a lot to us. Kyle Stewart, a loyal listener. We really do appreciate you, buddy. Pretty sure that same source has Zach Hicks signing as the backup kicker. Hey, I mean,
Love it.
Kyle Stewart is the comedian of the night. That's awesome. That's awesome. And hey, that source probably does have Zach Hicks signing as the backup kicker because, as we've said, the Colts keep things their lips sealed with all of these matters. We really appreciate the support, Kyle. Thank you so much for always tuning in, and we'll get our boy Stats Matt up here. So, need your thoughts and reactions to the Anthony Richardson's letter, Drake. Let's talk about it before we move into the other Colts news. I think we can put a bow on the Will Levis talk. We think he's a great quarterback. We think the Colts probably like him a little bit more, or like Anthony Richardson a little bit more than Will Levis. But we also think that the Colts can have success if they do end up taking Will Levis in the draft. So let's talk about that, the Anthony Richardson letter. If you guys don't know yet, I highly encourage you to go look this up on the Players Tribune. Anthony Richardson put out a letter titled "Dear NFL GMs," kind of basically just telling his story. And I loved this move because it's a behind the scenes look. It's basically from his heart telling how he grew up, how he discovered the game of football, fell in love with the game of football, his family life, what all he went through in college, what he learned in college, and what he wants to do and is prepared to work for in the NFL. Drake, you actually wrote a piece on this that went live on horseshoehuddle.com this afternoon. I'm going to let you take the floor. What did you think of that letter?
Well, everybody's talked about the athleticism and the physical stuff about Anthony Richardson, but it gets kind of mowed over how hard he's worked. Without giving too much away, football essentially in a nutshell, it was his savior. It was also his most loving family member. His uncle got him hooked on it, and then his uncle passed, and he grew up, very, like in some unfortunate circumstances, but his biggest inspiration was his mom. Worked hard for him and his brother, and without a dad, still somehow managed to climb through. Very raw, did well enough at Florida to get a chance to play for an NFL team. So I'm telling you, if you haven't read it, the end paragraph will give you chills. Whether you want the guy or not, you will learn to respect him and how hard he's worked, just like everybody else, to be at this point. So it's good stuff.
Right. And I think it just, for me, it basically just reinforces everything that I have heard privately and publicly about Anthony Richardson. He is a very hard worker. He is very determined to be the best that he can be. He is a sponge. He is soaking up knowledge about football wherever he can find it, whether it was his uncle starting him out in Pop Warner football, then going to his middle school, his high school coaches. He talked about the 3 different head coaches that he had at the University of Florida. He talked about learning from Kyle Trask, who was a quarterback that was a couple years ahead of him at Florida. And then just putting that all together and the pure determination that he has, dating back to what he said at the combine, saying he wants to be the greatest. He wants to be Patrick Mahomes. He wants to be Tom Brady. He wants to go out there, prove everybody wrong, and make it so he leaves a mark on this game. And when we talk about that obsession with your craft that Shane Steichen always mentions, something that is so important to him, this screams that. I know some people it kind of rubbing the wrong way. Like, why is he putting this out? Is this just all a facade and just to make it look like he's showing off or trying to get the public on his side? I don't think that at all. I think this is a kid that is down to earth. I think it's a kid that wanted to really share his story in his own words. He didn't want the media that wasn't strictly talking to him to shape his story without his input. And this is why I love the Players Tribune so much. And I think it's why when we had Isaiah McKenzie on, I thought it was such a great interview, is because a lot of media members and a lot of media types try to control interviews with players and people that are in the game. In my opinion, that's not what makes a good interview. What makes a good interview is letting the player tell their story and explain their thoughts fully and how and clearly how they want to do it. So when a player writes something in the Players Tribune, it's all their words, all their thoughts getting out to everybody. Like when we talked to Isaiah McKenzie, we let him go on a 10-minute rant about the locker room because it was his thoughts. We wanted to make sure he had his platform to speak clearly. Richardson did the same thing here with this Players Tribune article. Again, I encourage you all to go read it. It's an incredible piece. It will make you a fan of Anthony Richardson, regardless if he is chosen by the Colts or not. He's a really, really good kid, and I think this just reinforces that there's a better chance of him hitting his ceiling and that potential than not. So I definitely would encourage you all to go give it a quick read. Stats Matt, thanks for the super chat, buddy. We always appreciate you. So let's move it along here to the latest Colts news and rumors. We'll talk about these real quick and then let you guys get on with your Thursday evening. We're going to start with Shane Steichen's comments, and I know Logan Schmidt, this is going to hurt you, buddy. They was asked kind of are they still considering Lamar, still looking into that? And Shane Steichen said point blank, right now we're focused on the draft and we're focused on the guys that are here. And I think pretty much closing the door on anybody's last little hopes and dreams that the Colts could be going after Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, and the thing about Shane Steichen is you're not gonna leave the question thinking to yourself, what does he mean by that? He's just his words are very short, but they're very concrete in weight. So you can take them as you hear them. And so I think that he's ready to mold somebody. I think that he's actually, this is just an opinion, but I'm sure he's probably made it clear, hey, I want say in picking the next quarterback for this team. And if I'm going to be the guy that's going to be heading, a brand new offense and I want to be vertical, I'm sure he wants to groom somebody from, draft on, from day one on, rather than have to try to chip away at maybe some habits that you might have to break.
Right. And it's going to be interesting to see, but I think this definitely puts it into a box that, hey, it's time to focus on the draft, man. And we need to focus on who we've got here. Cause like we had talked about on Monday was the start of the Colts offseason program, that they're ready to get the season started and they're ready to start fresh with that rookie quarterback. So, and another guy that stepped up to the podium, DeForest Buckner. DeForest Buckner addressed the trade rumors. We talked about this when it happened. There were no talks of a trade from DeForest Buckner anywhere else. He wants to be in Indy. He trusts Chris Ballard's vision. He's very excited to see what Shane Steichen is going to do with this team. And then another thing that stood out to me is DeForest Buckner played all of last season with a torn UCL in his elbow, which basically is one of the main nerves, the main joints in the elbow. It's what Brock Purdy of 49ers just had surgery on that's taking him months to recover. DeForest Buckner had a torn UCL all season, and he was arguably the best player on the entire Colts team last year. That just speaks to the amount of toughness and the amount of talent that Defo has. And when you have that guy, this is why Chris Ballard said if he could have 53 DeForest Buckners, he would in a heartbeat. And I agree with that.
Well, and that is exactly the kind of tenacity that defense needs to have, because after this roller coaster season that passed, arguably the worst in recent memory, the fact that he played so well, was one of the two guys that probably got recognized the least, but yet played at the highest level at the position. Him and Stewart were absolute terrors to offensive lines, and it just makes you think. I wonder what could a fully healthy DeForest Buckner have done? Maybe double-digit sacks, but definitely makes you excited to have him. Definitely makes you excited for him to recover, and it makes me even more excited for 23 to see how he's going to play then.
Ligaments, yeah, you get it. It was something in the elbow.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm not a doctor. I went to school to start to be a doctor, but hey, now I'm talking to you guys about the Colts on a YouTube podcast. So I think I made the right choice personally. But and then we heard from Michael Pittman. I know, Drake, we didn't have this in our notes, but I did want to talk about it as Stats Matt brings it up. Pittman isn't too concerned about a contract extension right now. I think one will get done. Yeah, I do. I really do think that the Colts really appreciate Michael Pittman and what he brings to this team. I would love for him to get some quarterback continuity because he's been around 100 catches and 1,000 yards with everybody in the world and the janitor from Lucas Oil Stadium throwing him the football. I would like to see him get a good, consistent quarterback. And I think we're talking about Michael Pittman as a Pro Bowl wide receiver. And I'm talking 110 catches, 1,200 yards, eight touchdowns, 8 to 10 touchdowns. I'm just super high on Michael Pittman, his ability, what he brings to this team. And I know he gets a lot of heat for not being a quote unquote wide receiver one. A lot of these wide receiver ones have really good quarterbacks throwing the ball. You get Michael Pittman, a really good quarterback throwing him the ball. Maybe it might take a couple years for this rookie to develop, but we're going to be talking about Michael Pittman as a Pro Bowl caliber wide receiver.
He did absolutely incredible with Carson Wentz as the quarterback. Okay, you get a guy who is accurate, you get a guy who gets that ball out quickly, and you get a guy that can actually get the ball downfield, mix that with Steichen utilizing McKenzie, Pierce, Woods to draw attention away from Pittman. All those things combined, you've got a Pro Bowl season. You have a Pro Bowl receiver, and yes, he is a number one receiver in the right circumstances, but a lot of guys, like you said, would not be a number one receivers in the wrong circumstances like he was in. So very fair to say that.
Yep, exactly. Final thing we're going to talk about tonight, a Shaquille Leonard update. So we heard from both Shane Steichen and from Zaire Franklin about Shaquille Leonard. Of course, they're not going to provide a timetable. You don't really want to do that. There's no reason to provide a timetable when Shaquille Leonard will be back because it's only April. We don't need to really be worrying about that until July and August. But he's making good progress. Shaquille Leonard, hearing what he has said in recent weeks, he's very upbeat. You can just see a difference in tone from last year to where he is right now. He said at the end of the year that he really thinks that second surgery fixed the problem. He no longer has pain going down his legs. Things are firing how they used to be. So he's getting that feel in his nerves back. It's all about building up strength. And I think if the Colts were really concerned about Shaquille Leonard coming back, I think they would have made a run and would have made sure to keep Bobby Okereke in the fold. I think that's the biggest thing that people can take away from this is the Colts let Bobby Okereke walk. If they weren't confident that Shaquille Leonard was going to come back and be the Shaquille Leonard that he was, Bobby Okereke would still be a member of the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah, and you every Colts fan should be excited to hear that Shaquille Leonard is making a recovery because that man is a turnover waiting to happen every single play, whether it's a fumble, a pick, a deflected pass for a pick. The guy is an absolute machine. So he can put out about the same output that 2 or 3 average linebackers can in one player. Now pair him with a drafted linebacker or potentially someone else like EJ Speed and Zaire Franklin. That's a pretty good linebacking core, if you ask me.
Yep. I can't wait to see Shaq Leonard back on the field. He transforms the defense. He's a turnover machine. The defense just plays differently when Shaquille Leonard is out there, and it's very noticeable. So if the Colts defense can take another step under Gus Bradley's scheme, you get a healthy Shaquille Leonard out there, a healthy DeForest Buckner, another year of progression from Kwity Paye, Dio Adangbo. There really is a lot to like on this Colts defense. They still have some questions at cornerback, which might be answered in the draft. We'll kind of talk about that here within the next couple weeks before we get to the draft. But there's a lot to like for this defense, and I'm excited for what it can do in the 2023 season. But hey, guys, that's our show for tonight. We appreciate you all so much. All the super chats, absolutely mind-blowing tonight. It was absolutely incredible. I'll shout you guys out one more time. Stats Matt, Kyle Stewart, Wyatt Law, Logan Schmidt, Spook Hill Joe, happy birthday to you, buddy. Nathan, I'm going to try to pronounce your last name, Comanci. I hope I said that right. If not, I do apologize. Sarah, you were one of the ones with the super chat as well. You guys are absolutely awesome. Shout out to DSG Goodbar, Dabney. Let's talk about Dave. Let's talk about CMDSR. Let's talk about Saul. All of you guys, we really do appreciate it. It's hard to capture all of you guys, but every single one of you is what makes this show absolutely amazing. So if you haven't done so already, please go ahead and look at the ticker at the bottom as it scrolls by. Go ahead and like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook. Go ahead and follow at Colts on FN on Twitter. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and hit that bell so you know whenever we go live or our fellow colleagues at Horseshoe Huddle are going live on the site, because we've got a lot more coming for you before the draft and then after the draft as well. Drake and I have been writing away on horseshoehuddle.com as well. Drake, what are some stories that you got out right now on the site?
So the last two that released were kind of like Shane Steichen's comments kind of on the quarterback situation and, how it applies to the rumors of who are you going to draft and who are you going to go for Lamar. So that piece. And then the other one is Anthony Richardson's letter and kind of what that means for the Indianapolis Colts and the rest of the league that he released out on his Twitter feed.
Awesome. Great story, Drake. I've got a piece out comparing Anthony Richardson and Will Levis and who's the better fit for the Indianapolis Colts. Went deep on the analytics there, diving into all various metrics, really comparing how each one of them fits in the four things that Shane Steichen values most in a quarterback. And then I've got a piece that's detailing all of DeForest Buckner's comments, from the trade talk to how he feels about Shane Steichen. All the details are in there. Tomorrow, I'll have a piece on Michael Pittman and the extension talks with the Indianapolis Colts. So make sure to go check all of those out on horseshoehuddle.com. Go follow Drake at DWalsterDrake. You can follow me at Andrew Moore NFL. We will be back Monday night to cap off our talk on the quarterback class with number 5 in the class, in our opinion, and maybe the biggest wild card, Tennessee's own Hendon Hooker. So we're going to dive into Hendon Hooker. Make sure you tune in for that. And we've also got a very special announcement that we are going to be giving on Monday as well. Something fun is happening for Drake and I next week, so you'll want to catch that. Hendon Hooker on Monday, special announcement on Monday. We'll see you then. Have a good one.